Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this webinar on the history of Holy Cross mission and values at St. Edward's University. My name is Father Peter Walsh. I'm Director of Campus Ministry at St. Ed's, and very happy to be here. I'm originally from Boston and really enjoying life here in Texas with St. Edward's University.
And I'm Brother Larry Atkinson. I'm retired presently, recently retired, and was 19 years working at St. Edward's University, first as a career counselor, and then after that, 11 years in campus ministry. And I'm also a 1970 grad of St. Ed's.
And it's really my pleasure to be on the stage today with Father Peter and Brother Larry. I'm Marco Clark. I'm the Executive Director of the Holy Cross Institute. And I'm brand new to St. Edward's University. Just started here July the 1st. And while I may be new to St. Edward's, I'm really no stranger to Holy Cross. I was educated in a Holy Cross Brothers School in Washington, D.C. area, Bishop McNamara High School, where I graduated in 1985. And then I returned there in 1997 and served as principal and later as president before being invited and serving in this position. So a great honor for me to be on the stage with both of you today, and we're delighted to bring you this presentation.
This is a presentation that Brother Larry and I have been doing over the last few years at Homecoming. And unfortunately, we've got both the reality of the pandemic, and then also we had pretty severe weather for Homecoming this year. And so we're bringing it to you tonight instead. And this year, because Dr. Marco Clark is new to the Holy Cross Institute, we decided to include him with this presentation so that he can talk more about the work of the Institute at St. Ed's.
And for the older alumni, and particularly those in the Golden Guard, congratulations, by the way, your experience of Holy Cross was probably mostly and directly with the brothers themselves, who were a majority of professors at the time, even when I was here and graduating in 1970. So your experience is the personal one, but we didn't have a vocabulary about Holy Cross. For you younger alumni, there were fewer brothers who were still at St. Edward's who hadn't retired, but you have the vocabulary. Holy Cross, as we grew, understood and realized that the vocabulary was in the words of Father Basil Moreau, his educational philosophy and his spiritual philosophy. So that began to become incorporated into all of our schools. And here at St. Ed's, we found that this is something that is now become common parlance, not only with the faculty and staff, but also with the students. So it kind of makes everybody equal. Some of you maybe had personal experience of brothers, but without the vocabulary. And the newer students or younger alumni had some opportunity to meet a few brothers, but mostly you were able to get the vocabulary of what Holy Cross is about.
Yeah, I think one of the joys for me too in my role, brother, is that as I hear students around the country speak about with that same language, right? They speak those same terms of what makes our schools unique, right? And so it's a beautiful thing, and we'll share more about the Holy Cross Institute a little bit later on. But this is a special year for us too, right? So as the slide demonstrates, it's the 200th anniversary, the founding of the Brothers of St. Joseph. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, let me just mention that. Holy Cross really began in 1820 with the founding of the Brothers of St. Joseph by Father Jacques Dugerier. And he had been ordained in secret during the French Revolution and had to practice ministry and say Mass in secret, really for fear of his death, because the church had been banned in France at that time. But he was still willing to do that. So when we think of things like the courage to act, which we see later on in this program, we realize that Jacques Dugerier really had the courage because he had the commitment. After the Napoleonic period began, the church was allowed to practice again, and Jacques Dugerier was placed in a small town and decided that the students and the children in the area were lacking education because of the confusion of the French Revolution, and brought together a group of women and a group of men, educated them, and sent them out to teach in the local parishes and the local villages. And eventually, the women became a religious order and became the Sisters of Providence. and the men became the Brothers of St. Joseph, dedicated to St. Joseph. And as I had learned recently from Father Peter, that it was combined effort of Jacques de Jarier and the brothers themselves who decided to dedicate themselves as to St. Joseph, as the Brothers of St. Joseph. So we celebrate this year, 2020, 2021, as the bicentennial, the year that we honor the founding of the original part of Holy Cross, which was the Brothers of St. Joseph.
I think it's great that Brother Larry said that he learned something from me, because it's always been the other way around. So we're really happy for that admission today.
And, you know, and it's also fitting and providential that Pope Francis declared this year as a year dedicated to St. Joseph, right? The year of St. Joseph. And so fitting that the brothers and Father de Jarier selected St. Joseph as the patron saint. It's his example of humility and as protector and as leader, his selflessness and his loyalty and his faithfulness and his saying yes to God is exactly represented through the lives that you men as Holy Cross Brothers have led for the last 200 years. And so it's fitting as we celebrate the 200th anniversary that we also celebrate this year of St. Joseph with the Universal Church.
This is our wall of fame, as we might call it, and I'm going to move out of the way a little bit. On the upper left-hand corner is a portrait from a stained glass window in France of Father Jacques de Jarier. And again, he was the one who began Holy Cross. And in 1837, 17 years after the founding, as the brothers were prospering and teaching in many, many schools in France, he, as an aging priest and an aging man, just wasn't able to continue leading the brothers. And he asked the bishop if he could hand over the leadership of the Brothers of St. Joseph to Father Basil Moreau, who at that time was a young priest, and he had established a small group of missionary priests to go out in the countryside and offer the sacraments and say Mass and do pastoral ministry. So that began the beginning of the Congregation of Holy Cross, because Basil Moreau lived in the city of Le Mans, France, and specifically in the neighborhood of Sainte-Croix, which means Holy Cross in French. And he saw that as really prophetic, that this, you know, that here we are, we're in the area of Sainte-Croix, this is the name of our congregation. And he brings together the priests and the brothers and expands them, and then eventually joins together with a group of women and founds the Holy Cross Sisters. Again, after only a few years, Father Moreau, who had a very missionary spirit, starts sending the brothers off to different areas of the world. First was Algeria, which was a French colony at the time in French speaking, and then eventually to the United States and to Canada. So immediately in the beginning, there was a sense of missionary spirit, that Holy Cross is meant to educate, to offer pastoral ministry, and we needed to move where the people were moving. And the New World, United States and Canada, and then eventually, of course, South America, Africa, and Asia came in as well.
And that brings us to the third person on our Rogues Gallery. Right beneath Father Moreau is Father Edward Sorin. Father Edward Sorin led the mission of Holy Cross to the United States. They stopped off in New York Harbor and Manhattan when they landed, and he celebrated Mass at St. Peter's on the Feast of the Triumph of the Holy Cross in 1841, but then headed for southern Indiana, where the Bishop of Indiana had invited Holy Cross to start a school. After a little while, just about a year, the bishop offered them property up in northern Indiana along the south bend of the St. Joseph River, which became the town of South Bend, and the property became the campus of the University of Notre Dame, which needs no further explanation because we're focused on St. Edward's. And so later on in his career, in 1869, Father Sorin had become the Superior General of Holy Cross and met the Bishop of Galveston. All of Texas was one diocese. They met on a ship heading to Europe. Here were these two, Bishop Dupuy and Father Soren, 2 Frenchmen sharing a glass of cognac. And the bishop offered Father Soren the opportunity to come to Texas, specifically to Austin, where a woman named Mary Doyle was offering property for the beginning of a Catholic institution of education in the city of Austin, the capital. And so Father Soren visited our campus before there was anything there, stood underneath the Soren Oak, as you know, and accepted responsibility to begin another university, but here in Texas. Father Soren originally started the school. It was St. Aloysius Academy, but it became St. Edward's Academy because he wanted the school not to be named after himself, but to be named after his patron saint. And you can see his patron saint right next to him underneath Father Jarier. St. Edward, the king and confessor, was never at St. Edward's, never involved with Holy Cross. He lived 1,000 years before any of this was to happen. He was King of England. But as the patron saint of Father Soren, the school, the university, first a college, and then the university was named after him. What's been interesting about Holy Cross is that as we've gone through the years, the institutions that began to be staffed originally by brothers and by priests included a lot of lay folks as teachers and administrators, and we've ensured that the founding principle of Holy Cross would be maintained in all of our institutions through the founding of the Holy Cross Institute by Dr. Martin and Brother Stephen Walsh here at St. Edward's University. And Dr. Marco Clark will have a few words more to say about that later.
And the final person on the right is our most beloved Brother Andre Bissett. Brother Andre was a sickly young man, was originally not accepted into Holy Cross, and eventually through the intercession of his bishop and his pastor that he was allowed to enter Holy Cross, and he was a simple, humble man. He wasn't educated, hardly spoke English, but had a great devotion to St. Joseph. And Brother Andre was the porter and the caretaker of the Collège Notre Dame in Montreal. And across the collège was a large hill called Montréal. Of course, that's what Montreal is named after. And his dream was to create a shrine, an oratory for St. Joseph on the top of that hill. Eventually that came to be, mainly because he was able to, with his great faith, people would come to him and ask for healing. And he always believed that it was not St. Joseph, but it was not himself, but it was St. Joseph who was healing. And he would take oil from an oil lamp that lit in front of the statue of St. Joseph and would give people this oil and would tell them, bless the person who is sick. And lo and behold, many people were cured from their illnesses. And from there, the faith of the people grew in the devotion of Brother Andre to St. Joseph. And so now the shrine, which is built, is the picture is on the right. It is the largest shrine to St. Joseph in the world. And the dome, I understand, is second only to the size of the dome of St. Peter's at the Vatican. So it was through simple, humble faith and healing and caring for individuals that he becomes a saint. Not the great philosopher, not a great educator, not a great writer or founder, a simple, humble man. And I think we take great inspiration in that, particularly as brothers, that it was Andre who we modeled ourselves afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here on the right is the statue of St. Edward's. And I think all students would recognize this now. Students who graduated recently might see it on the top of a trustee hall. But when it was presented, it was across from the library. You older alumni would remember this. And there was, when it was new, it was yet to be blessed and to be revealed. And so it was covered with a cloth before the dedication ceremony. But some of you clever students from the class of maybe about 67, 65, 66, 67, decided to be clever, and the night before snuck in a can of Lone Star beer in the hands of Edward, so that when it was when the cloth was taken off and the big reveal happened, he was not only holding the Westminster Abbey in his right hand, he was holding a Lone Star beer in the second. And I think most people of my age remember hearing that story. And at the Golden Guard dinner several years ago, I heard the true story. It was the person who had done it and his friends, they confessed right there at the alumni dinner. So it's a great story, but it's a wonderful statue of St. Edward. And of course, on the left is the beautiful tower, the building that we all remember. It has been recently renovated on the outside and the end, and it is just a magnificent building, still sits on the top of the hill overlooking the city of Austin. So that's our home here at St. Edward.
So I'm glad we got the real scoop on that was a true story. You never know if this is myth, legend, or lore, and I wonder if today there would be a can of Thirsty Goat to celebrate the Hilltoppers instead of. So
it would have to be one of those special beers.
That's one of the
little product placement
beers.
there, Marco.
Right.
That's
And here we have the seal of the Congregation of Holy Cross and the seal of St. Edward's University. On the right is the seal of the congregation. On the top, you'll notice the words Congregatio of Santa Croce, which is Latin for the Congregation of Holy Cross. And that's where we get the letter C.S.C. after our name, taken from that. And then in the middle is the cross and the anchors. That was a great devotion and a belief by Basil Moreau in the fact that the cross is an essential part of our life. It is our hope. And it's so strong that we anchor, thus the anchors, we anchor our hope in the cross, in the belief that Jesus is resurrected and bringing us to him. So it comes from a Latin expression from one of the Psalms, I think it is, Ave crux spes unica, hail the cross, our only hope. And that line underneath there says spes unica as a representation of that. And underneath that is JMJ, is Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And remember, the Congregation of Holy Cross is dedicated to the Holy Family, that we are to be a model of the Holy Family. Priests, brothers, and sisters working together in community for mission. So the essence of the Holy Family is lived out in the mission of Holy Cross.
Yeah.
And I think that's why students and alumni often feel a sense of being at home when they come to our campuses, especially St. Edward's. We've often had visiting seniors in high school say that when they stepped foot on campus, they felt at home, and when they saw the interaction of different administrators, faculty, and staff. So if you look, then the seal of St. Edward's University is drawn off of the one from Holy Cross. It's got the cross is very prominent. It has an anchor as well for the spes unica, the hail to the cross, our only hope. But then there's a scepter crossing the anchor instead, and that's a reminder that our patron saint was the king of England and a saint, a confessor. The wavy band at the bottom of the cross is the Colorado River, which is just a few miles from campus, a few miles north. Now, of course, it's dammed and it's Lady Bird Lake. At the center of the wavy band is a heart that's crossed by arrows standing for love and learning. And then finally, on that upper left-hand corner of the shield, we've got the Lone Star of Texas. And I always like to point out to students that this is emblematic of the way that Holy Cross meets students where you are, and doesn't enforce an identity on you, but rather draws what's best from students out of themselves, but also adds aspects of Holy Cross to your experience at St. Edward's. So the shield is a great way of giving an example of that.
And those seals resemble the original seal of the Congregation of Holy Cross that you see displayed here through this beautiful stained glass window. Represented there, of course, is the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the Heart of Joseph. And so this congregational seal sadly did not receive papal approval because the idea of having a congregation that combined the men and women was not something that was approved at the Vatican. But from that also came a great gift, because that great gift became the branches of 3 women's religious orders, the Sisters of Holy Cross, the Sisters of the Holy Cross. And the Marionite Sisters of Holy Cross. This quote serves as an amazing inspiration for us, not only for the Holy Cross Brothers, this comes from the Constitutions of Holy Cross, but for those of us in Holy Cross education, because ultimately this is what we feel that we do, is that we're developing our students to possess the competence to see and the courage to act, which is so needed in today's world.
And this is a quote from the International Commission on Consecrated Life in Holy Cross, written in 2006, and allow me to read it. It says, "This is the foundational charism of the Congregation of Holy Cross, to regenerate society and to, quote, bring about a better time by a constant response to the most pressing needs of the church and society." And I think the quote, "bring about a better time," is the essence of what we are at St. Edward's University, is that not only can we bring about a better time for our current students and the population and the involvement of faculty and staff and students together, but also by hopefully inspiring our students to do good in the world, to bring about a better time. We're creating an opportunity for the future, so that to bring about a better time is not just in the present, but it is also projected into the future. And that is why it is one of the pressing needs, as we know, in our society today.
Yeah.
So here's just a little dateline of the 200 years since the beginning of the founding of the Brothers of St. Joseph down to our present day, with some of those highlighted points that we talked about: our arrival in the United States, our arrival in Texas, the chartering of St. Edward's as a college in 1885, and then as a university in 1925. That's pretty rapid growth if you think about it. And to the point now in 2021 where there are 115 colleges, universities, and schools in 17 different countries around the world. And that Holy Cross is educating more than 110,000 students each year. So 110,000 students get to know Holy Cross values and our education.
And here is an example of the countries that Holy Cross is involved in ministry in schools and parishes and social services, from Bangladesh to the United States, in countries in different continents and different parts of the world and different forms of development. And this is an opportunity for our St. Edward students now during our spring break trips, our service breaks during that time, and then also in the summer, to be able to participate with the Holy Cross Mission and Ministries in several of these countries. And so it is a connection that we have. A lot of our high schools do the same thing. And we're able to then make a connection with our present students here with the mission of Holy Cross around the world.
Yeah, yeah. And brother, you know, just a couple of days ago, I had the chance to interact with one of our schools in Lakeview, Uganda. And it was striking to me that the faculty who I met with on one day, and then the next day I met with the students, the language was the same language that we speak, the vibe and the experience on campus the same. And the word that they used to describe that experience was family. And that is the larger family of Holy Cross. 110,000 students every day. Imagine them learning with the competence to see and the courage to act, right? That's what we have an impact. That's what we do every day.
And here we have a portrait of Reverend Basil Moreau, and it's been touched up a little bit. You know, usually the only portrait that we have, the only photograph that we have of him, is one he's looking rather stern because he didn't like modern photography. You know, at that time in the 1830s, it was just something new. You know, he wasn't familiar with George Eastman at Kodak and didn't like photographs. But his students decided to trick him and said, we're all going to come together and we're all going to take a picture all together. So I guess somehow he agreed to that. And then at the last minute, all the students disappeared off to his side, and he was taken with a grimace on his face because he was probably very upset. But what we know from his writings, Moreau was a very, very gentle, caring, passionate person about ministry. And it's unfortunate that the only photograph we have, we're lucky we have one of him, but it is one that doesn't project, I think, what Moreau really was like and the type of person that he was. because he's our great founder. It is his educational philosophy that continues nowadays at St. Edward's and around the world. Excuse me, this is a slide on the left. It's a recent book written by Brother George Claywater, and it is called The Brothers of St. Joseph, about the early founding of the brothers. And it's available to purchase at any time. Brother George would be happy to give you any more details about that. I'm anxious to read it myself. It's just recently been published. And on the right, we have some words that several years ago, Brother Joel Jalanza was giving a presentation at the Holy Cross Institute convocation. And I thought that they were very great words to understand who Holy Cross is in kind of a more modern term. He spoke of us as educators, as pioneers, and as disciples. But I thought the three aspects of it were very clever, because you put this in a new context of the 21st century, and I think they make sense. We are purveyors of possibility for our students, entrepreneurs of opportunity, and loiterers with intent to be around students, to intend to assist them, to encourage them, to allow them to grow into the person that God meant them to be. So I thank Brother Joel Jalanza for this presentation that he made several years ago.
And you know, you can go to the YouTube channel for the Holy Cross Institute, by the way, and you can see a recording of an interview that we did, a webinar that Brother George conducted with the Holy Cross Institute, in which he talks about this history of the Brothers of St. Joseph and a little bit about his book. So this is another one of the foundational quotes that is probably most familiar to Holy Cross educators around the globe. And I'll read it with you. It says, quote, "We shall always place education side by side with instruction. The mind will not be cultivated at the expense of the heart. And while we prepare useful citizens for society, we shall likewise do our utmost to prepare citizens for heaven." This comes from Blessed Basil Moreau's manuscript titled Christian Education, which was used as a primary source document by the educational leaders in the schools, particularly in the early days. And it was sort of rediscovered just in the last really 30 or so years, and is now again used as a primary resource for Holy Cross educators around the world.
And you know, Marco, I always like to point out that this was the middle of the 19th century. So while that idea of formation of the heart as part of an education is rather typical now, back in Moreau's day, it must have been pretty innovative. Yeah. And so continuing on with the way in which that formation of the heart and mind carry out, this is a statement from the St. Edward's Mission Statement that talks about the specific ways in which St. Edward's is different as an institution because of its foundation by Holy Cross. It talks about 3 distinguishing characteristics, and the first one is the courage to take risks, and you know, the competence to see and the courage to act. And if we remember that rogues gallery of founders, each one of those individuals had to take certain risks in their lives in order to have the mission go forward. Whether it's Father Dejare hiding out in secret, whether it's Father Moreau sending religious out very early on, Father Soren coming to the wilds of northern Indiana, or even down here in Austin as the state capitol was being built. All of those acts of courage are encouraged, no pun intended, in the lives of our students. The second is an international perspective. Holy Cross is an international community and has been from the beginning. And so St. Edward's has always had religious kind of from around the world as part of the staff and faculty, primarily through Holy Cross. And then finally, this one is very key, the commitment to provide educational opportunities for students of varying backgrounds. We're religiously diverse, and we've been that way from the beginning at St. Edward's. We draw from many cultures here on campus, and then we also have a special commitment to educating students from different economic backgrounds, especially those who might not have the financial background or the economic background to usually place them in higher education. A great example of that, of course, is our college assistant migrant program, which now I think is in its 48th year, where one of the founding campuses of the camp program and one of the most successful as well.
Extraordinary.
Here we have our beginnings. As Father Peter had mentioned, that Mary Doyle donated her property to the diocese if the bishop would establish a Catholic school. And she had about 370 acres on the hill overlooking the city of Austin. And this was her original home. And I think that it was probably in better condition when she lived there. But this photograph was taken when the I-35 was being built, and it was right before it was to be torn down. And right now, you know, there are buildings across from the I-35 from Woodward Street. And but this is where the original St. Edward's began. The brothers and priests lived on the top floor. There were rooms and dorms, and on the bottom were the few classrooms. And we mentioned that there was only 3 or 4 students at the time, local children of local ranchers, some of whom lived in ranches, you know, adjacent to the St. Edward's property. And so we've got our humble beginnings. So it would be nice, you know, it's nice to know that as the university grew, just like Holy Cross, it started out rather humbly. And then it began to grow a bit. Here we have a picture of what was then the newly built Fremont Hall. The building is still on campus. It's no longer a residence hall. It's been renovated, and it is beautiful offices in now. And in there on the left, we actually have a little coffee shop as well. You're going to find right now, if you see it, a lot more trees and a lot more students around it. But that was when it was built in the early 60s. Now we have several slides of some of the brothers that those of you in the Golden Guard and those of you older alumni would remember. Here's a couple pictures of everyone's favorite physics teacher, Brother Romard Barthel, greatly loved and just recently had retired and recently passed away. Then we have Daniel Lynch, great biology professor, defender of the environment, wrote his personal dissertation on the natural growth and the natural environment and plants of Texas, and it is still a staple in the Texas environmental and ecological understanding of what the native Texas plants is. Brother Daniel Lynch. Here's a couple of different ones, Brother Thomas McCullough, and among others, and then Brother Romard, as they started taking their habits off and then wearing ties. And in the bottom, Brother Stephen Walsh, who was the president, after some students had, after the Golden Guard had graduated, Stephen Walsh became the president and really took it into the next step. And he's presenting an award to Brother William Dunn, who was called Brother Fabius at the time. And he was, again, a very beloved history professor. Stayed here until his retirement. And here are some of the other brothers and priests that were here as the lay people. They were the first, some of the lay people were the first ones to come. They had great contact and close personal educational contact with the brothers. So it is these early professors that really began to carry on the tradition as the brothers began to retire. And those early professors then were able to carry that on until we have today. And I want to make mention of the sisters, the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters that opened up. There's the sister Richard Mary was her name at the time. The IHM sisters from Monroe, Michigan, came down and established, remember, Mary Hill College, and it was to be a co-institutional with St. Edward's. It lasted for about 3 years because it just didn't seem to make sense anymore. It just seemed to make more sense to bring it together as a co-institutional. But these were great educators. These sisters had great experience, and anybody who had these sisters, we had a great education for them, as well as the brothers who were committed to, really working one-on-one with the students. This is become a kind of an iconic picture. This photograph was taken right after the events of 9/11. And like everybody around the world, people needed to gather together in prayer and support. And we did so at St. Edward's. We had a candlelight vigil. That was very moving because the students themselves were really moved themselves. But it represents the three aspects of Holy Cross that we understand: that we are Catholic, that we are mission-driven, and that we are Holy Cross. And we say that we are Catholic in its broadest sense. We understand that the word Catholic means universal. So it means to welcome people of all faiths, that we at St. Edward's, because we're Catholic, we educate and we want to walk with our students in their spiritual journey and to encourage them on that. So that's how Holy Cross has expanded its sense of being Catholic. We are mission driven because everything at the university is driven by the mission statement, that no new initiative can be begun unless it represents and fulfills the mission of the university. And finally is Holy Cross, is that we have our unique brand on St. Edward's University as we do at our other colleges, and we are able to say that we are a Catholic institution within the Diocese of Austin, Texas, with the charism of Holy Cross, of 200 years of educational philosophy.
Beautiful gift, beautiful gift.
Here's a couple other pictures, Brother Edwin Reggio and Brother William Mang. Edwin Reggio was a man of all trades, taught many classes, taught the band, had taught in the high school that closed in '67. And so these are people that you would be familiar with. Here are other different pictures of professors, Daniel Lynch and others, during different ceremonies and outdoor events. Here we have again, we have Brother Daniel Lynch, giving awards and receiving awards. Here we have Brother Romard again. As his younger days, he looks like young.
He looks
this
like
probably
a kid.
is taken in the 50s.
He looks
Yeah.
16.
Yeah, right. So that's one. And here's one that's a great laughing picture. Brother Simon Scribner, our English professor, just a wonderful man, became a painter, quite the painter, after he retired and stayed on campus and painted many scenes of the campus. The middle is Brother Stephen Walsh, and on the right is Mr. Bert Maloney, who was the chairman of the board. And currently, students who recently graduated know of the Maloney Room in the main building. It's named after this man here. Here's Brother Thomas McCullough again, and in his chemistry class, but it's in Fleck Hall. And so those of you older would remember that as the science building and the science lab. Those of you who are younger remember that as our modern, new, renovated building with a third floor added on that, with the School of Education having its center there, and with conference rooms on the third floor that give the most magnificent view of the city of Austin. Beautiful. So it's got a new life. And here again is Brother Simon, Brother Romard, and Brother William Dunn. And if you were here in the 60s and 70s, even into the 80s, you would probably have had those professors in your class.
Oh, there it is.
And yes, here we are. St. Ed's did have a football team. And it was quite successful because the coaches would come out of the University of Notre Dame, and it was the beginning of the tradition of Notre Dame, and they would come down here and teach, but then of course they would be recruited by the University of Texas, Rice University, and other universities. So in 1939, it was decided that they could no longer compete, they didn't have the money, and now you can buy a t-shirt in the bookstore that says undefeated since 1939, which of course is true because we haven't played since then. But it's a great old picture. Here's a few more pictures. Brother Cornelius, Brother William Dunn, Brother Stephen Walsh, and Brother Simon again with his famous pipe. Here's a picture. Just in 1960, this is the amount of graduates that we had at St. Ed's. So those of us who went here in the 60s and 70s, it was a rather small college, which gave it a very, very personal touch, if you remember. And that's, of course, in front of our chapel. By 1970, when I graduated, there were, maybe 4 or 5 times many of that. This is a picture I love because it is in what is now the Maloney Room, but at the time was a dormitory for the high school. St. Edward's High School was in the main building. And it's a great picture because it's obviously something that was probably used during recruitment and advertising. We have students quietly playing cards. We have a student playing the accordion. Nobody seems to mind. A couple students are reading. A couple students are playing games. And there's the brother right in the middle, the prefect, just perfectly content. Everything in perfect order. And the students who were perfectly behaved with their beds perfectly made. It's
just
a great
like today,
picture.
right? Just like today.
Just like they are all the time.
I'm sure. So, very quickly, we're going to give you a break here, Brother Larry. Thank you. And we know that you're celebrating your reunion this year as well, right? Last year. Yeah. Well, happy anniversary and congratulations. So the Holy Cross Institute was formed in 2004, and as Father Peter mentioned earlier, it was Brother Stephen Walsh and Dr. George Martin who had the idea to create St. Edward's University as a hub, as really a resource center, a mechanism to be able to expand the research and provide resources and programs and leadership development for Holy Cross schools around the world, particularly with an understanding that there would be more lay leaders who were in the schools as teachers and of course, as principals and presidents. And so the work that we do is reflective of something that's very Holy Cross. We provide information, right? That's the competence we talked about earlier. There's a formation element, right? There's a formation of leaders who possess that competence to see and the courage to act. And ultimately, it's through our own personal development that not only are we transformed, but we then have the greater ability to go out and transform the world. So it's really my honor to be able to do the work of the Holy Cross Institute today and to continue to follow as Father Moreau wrote to Father Soren in 1841, this beautiful quote, "I ask you to do everything you can to expand the work of Holy Cross, to spread it by every means that heaven puts within your reach." And so what we do is we take the elements of our history and an understanding of that history and as well Moreau's spirituality and from that have evolved a set of core values, or sometimes known as pillars, that help to define and shape our schools and to provide that guidance for the schools and the school leaders. I love this quote down at the bottom. In 2013, a group of Holy Cross educators from around the world, higher educators, came together and they wanted to really narrow down what is the defining feature of Holy Cross schools that makes ours different from everywhere else. And they came up with this. We are a Catholic education. We provide a Catholic education in the Holy Cross tradition, which transforms minds and hearts with zeal in communities of hope. And so, as I mentioned, those elements of Moreau's spirituality and those four pillars, this is a beautiful picture that comes from Moreau Catholic High School in Hayward, California, and it represents the four pillars that we discuss, that we talk about, that what we do in our schools is that we build respect, we bring hope, we are family, and we educate hearts and minds. And so the programs that we run are many. We run webinars, and our biggest event, which you're going to see at the very end of this presentation, a little promo video for, is our Convocation, which is the largest gathering of Holy Cross educators from around the world. This year we expect upwards of 500 participants and attendees in that program. That will come April 15th through the 18th. But there's other work that we do as well. We're in the process of publishing a prayer book, which has been written in the last year, contributed by students and faculty members from our schools all over the country. And there's so much more. So it's the networking opportunities, it's the opportunity for prayer, for spirituality, for personal growth and formation, to continue this legacy of Holy Cross. Just another great quote that defines really what we do. Father Moreau reminds us that knowledge alone is not sufficient in acquiring an education. It's judgment, ethics, character, spirit, and action upon the knowledge of the head and the heart are all critical elements. And as we talk about that pillar of hope, you can see here, what we do is a work of resurrection. And think about this in the context of today, right? This was written in the mid-19th century. And in the context of today, education is a work of resurrection. It is meant to be a liberation from the darkness of ignorance. It's meant to be a vehicle for the transformation of society. And it's meant to be a process that helps make all things, especially the persons engaged in it, knew. And Moreau, at the end of Christian education, he urges us to, with the eyes of faith, consider the greatness of our mission and the wonderful amount of good that we can accomplish.
And here we have a couple of last slides. None of us were around at the time, but there was a fire in 1903. And remember, the building was only built in about 1888, so it was practically a no building. And everybody at the time was down in the dining hall and the bottom floor, and it was a student who left early, went up to the dormitory that I just showed you the photo of, and the fire had started. So they were able to get everybody out of the building, but unfortunately there were no fire extinguishers at the time, and we were outside of the city, so the fire department was not able to come right away. So unfortunately we lost that beautiful building, but as you know, it was rebuilt, and believe it or not, this happened during Easter week, which is usually March or April, and they immediately wrote a letter to Father Soren, mentioned to Father Soren that we had to replace our building. And he appeals to Notre Dame, and they say, go ahead, rebuild it. And therefore, they were able to open this building again by the fall and have classes. That's how fast.
Wow.
Now it seems to take 3 or 4 years to get one of these modern buildings up.
Too soon to talk about that. That's too soon to mention that.
A very sensitive issue. Another thing that happened was in 1922 there was a tornado, and again, fortunately, they were able to get most of the students into the pool area, which was a safe, strong building. And there was one student who was killed during the time, sadly. But this is the damage that was done to Holy Cross Hall. So it was the only really tornado of great history that I think we've had on the hilltop. Here's one of my favorite pictures. Those of you older alumni will remember this as the pool. This was probably Red Cross classes or recreation or something. The modern students, you'll know this as the current bookstore. And those of you in between will know the next slide, because that's what the pool became. After it was closed, and after the new recreation center was built, what they did was empty out the pool, create a series of different platforms, and it was the grooviest place you could be in the 70s.
You can hear the disco
Yeah.
now, you know.
You can just hear a disco, you can see the clothes, and it was called the Rathskeller, which gave it kind of this great, German beer hall
Kind of a
name.
hip vibe, yeah.
Excuse me.
That's fantastic.
And then finally, the picture on the left is when what we used to be called the new gym, and now is called the older gym, was renovated recently, and it's now the University Federal Credit Union Athletic Center and Recreation Center and Gymnasium. When it was dedicated in 1950, Brother Edmund Hunt, who had been the president, buried this stone and that medal of St. Joseph. And they found that during the reconstruction. And they polished it up, put some updated information in, and then reburied that for the future. On the right is, of course, the lovely inside of our main building, the stairwell, greatly photogenic. And in the middle is red doors, a sign of welcome. That has now become one of the great symbols of university, the welcoming of the doors. And as students enter the university, we march them through the front doors into the main building to begin the process. And then as they graduate, after the baccalaureate mass, they walk out of the red doors out into the world. So it's become quite the symbol. This is the the evolution of our chapel. It first started as an exhibition hall. It became, after that, during World War II, when St. Ed's was really a military training school, because it was still all men at the time, it became actually a shooting range, a practice target range. It became a shop for a while to teach manual trades. And eventually, in about 1948, when the brothers came and took over the whole university, it became our chapel. And now it's been renovated several years ago. It's a beautifully bright, open, beautiful chapel that we're very, very happy with. Here are some old pictures of some of the teams during the 60s. The basketball team and the track with John Lucas was the young coach at the time.
I think we have to bring the throwback uniforms. Huh?
Yeah, I know, right?
Great uniforms, right. Here's the baseball team, John Lucas in the bottom, and one of the graduates in baseball teams, Mr. Trevino, from the class of 1970 or 1969 or so. Here's Brother Stephen Walsh again, and Professor Oslerhouse, and then some of the coaches. Here we have Joe Beck, who was the basketball coach at the time, and one of the IHM sisters.
Was she a coach?
She was not a coach, not at the time, but she was a great coach in the classroom, I'll tell you. On the left, those who were here for many years remember Dr. Virginia Daly, who was the academic dean at the time, and was here until the mid-90s as she graduated, and she still lives in the area. I think all of her children went to St. Edward's. And on the right was old Doc Robinson. There he is examining something with somebody with a cigar in his hand. But he was a great guy. He was on campus, and he was the one we went to if you were sick. He was it. And then in the bottom is Dr. Pete Pasoli, who taught English. Loved St. Edward's, stayed here till he retired.
That's awesome.
Here we have Holy Cross as it was and as it is and as it will be, just like the glory be. Our founders and our beginning, and then we have the new diversity of Holy Cross. It is not just Americans at the time, or not just Canadians. It is now global, and we have brothers and priests from the Philippines, from Africa, from Asia, from South America. Here we have an American, a Filipino in the United States, and a West African. And that represents the new face of Holy Cross. We understand now our universality. We understand now the traditions, and now the new generation, those areas of the world that were once missions, are now the ones that are providing the vocations for the future of Holy Cross.
Yeah, remarkable.
And here, last photograph is a photograph of St. Edward's as it was, probably sometime after 1903, because it would have been after the fire. And that was Austin at the time, just fields and hills. We had Holy Cross Hall was built after the Great Fire in 1903, so we know it's after 1903. And that was primarily, it was a residence hall until 1980s, I think. And then behind that is the pool and just a few other spare buildings. That was then, and this is now. This is now what Austin is.
There we go. Such a gorgeous, gorgeous campus. And
a great view.
Yeah, really an amazing view. And so, well, you know, we know that we're coming towards the end of our hour, but we do have a couple questions that have rolled in. So
great.
I'm going to go ahead and sort of serve as an MC for this portion and ask you. So, brother, how many brothers taught or were going to school, at its peak in the 60s and 70s?
Well, I don't know the exact number, but there were a lot. I would say the majority of the professors were brothers. And it was just the beginning of some of the late teachers who began, to fill in as the university grew a bit. There were at least 100 students' brothers living on campus and going to classes, preparing us to go out into the world, into our Holy Cross schools teaching. And so that number peaked, I think, in about 1965, 66, when they had to be actually in two buildings. The building was called Vincent Hall, which is where the St. Andre apartments are now, and Soren Hall. The students got to live in Soren Hall, which is another dormitory.
Wow.
So they were the primary, influence. We were involved in the intramural sports and a lot of other activities. So students were very familiar with having brothers in class. And many of us, you know, it was just a time of change. I came here in '67, we were wearing our habit in class. And then by the time I left in '70, we were wearing sport clothes. But we had gone through different stages of transforming at the time.
Yeah, I just have this beautiful vision of you know, these young men living, learning, serving, working together, ministering together. And, you know, even as I enter my office each day in Fremont Hall, I feel that I'm walking into a sacred space, right? And it is the shoulders of the brothers and priests, but the brothers, particularly here at St. Edward's, who we stand on today as we continue this legacy. And so, you know, we'd love to know a little bit more. Maybe Father Peter, you can answer this one for us. You probably have a favorite hilltop memory, but would you also share with us how does St. Edward's incorporate the spirit of the Holy Cross Brothers through our teaching and service today?
You know, that's a really great question, because the important thing is that it does continue. So even though there are fewer Holy Cross religious on campus, those values and experiences continue to affect this current generation of students. So what's my favorite hilltop memory? The Festival of Lights. You know, it's one of our oldest traditions. We were even able to pull it off this year in a virtual ceremony. But that's one example. It started by the brothers 40 years ago and continues now thanks to a lot of other folks on campus who pride that experience. But also in terms of the way in which faculty go about teaching students, they've got that commitment to mentoring and to close relationships with students that the brothers had and cultivated and shared with faculty of their own day, and now that our faculty continue. Service opportunities through campus ministry and through internships continue again that value of service that was so important to the brothers, and the commitment to social justice that we know is such an important part of the St. Edward's experience. And then finally, the kind of faith dimension, you know, of the campus that a lot of different folks, you know, continue to cultivate, not only in campus ministry, but also among the many religious communities that we have on our campus. And I think those three aspects really do talk very eloquently about the way Holy Cross and the brothers' impact on the lives of students over the many, many years that St. Edward's continues to primarily lay faculty and staff right now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in my short experience here now, although I'm also a parent of a St. Edward's University alum, class of 2017, but, you know, and I've had a great privilege of visiting almost all of the colleges and universities and schools in the country. And there's something that's just unique, profoundly Holy Cross right here at St. Edward's University. And I think it shines above the rest, that it is that sense of humility, I think. But there is a language that's spoken, and then there's a lived reality. You know, when I hear it from the professors and I hear it from staff members, people who are quoting Moreau and talking about educating hearts and minds and competence to see and courage to act, you know, that's so gratifying. That doesn't happen by accident, right? There's an intentionality about that. And so it's really a great blessing. Tremendous opportunity for me as the executive director of the Holy Cross Institute, first lay person to do this, but also an enormous responsibility, right? And I get asked the question sometimes, well, what gets me excited, right? What do I get? What wakes me up in the morning? And it's about impact, right? It's about impact. And I think, imagine those 110,000 students, those thousands of faculty and staff members who are influencing change. They're being the change that they want to see in the world, right? And preparing for better times than these. And you said that in the very beginning, brother, that's what we do, is we prepare for better times than these. It's been a difficult year for everyone. And yet there's still this sense of hope, right? And Ave Crux Spezunica, right? For every Good Friday, there's an Easter Sunday. And as we come to the end of this Lenten season and we celebrate the resurrection of the Lord, we remember his death and his suffering, but ultimately was followed by resurrection. And that's what Holy Cross education is. It's a work of resurrection. And so,
and I'd like to, if I may, give credit as well. Certainly, the brothers established that sense of Holy Cross by their lives, but we were fortunate in the presidents who followed after the brother presidents, Dr. Patricia Hayes, and then we're very fortunate to have Dr. George Martin. Both of those, from the very beginning, understood the importance of the history and tradition of Holy Cross lived through the brothers. And they have been instrumental in carrying on and articulating the vision of Holy Cross through St. Edward's University. And we're extremely grateful to those presidents who have continued on to, they have learned the vocabulary of Holy Cross. They have understood the mission and continue to make that alive so that it never passed away as the brothers then began to retire. That it was continued to be relived and reinvented as the years go on.
Yeah, and you know, I've never met Dr. Hayes, but have had the pleasure now to work under Dr. Martin's leadership for this short period of time, and he's one that I just greatly admire. And as we know, he's going to be retiring in just a couple of months, and he's in his twilight. And what a difficult last year I'm sure he had in leadership, but he continues to lead with grace, and he continues to lead with hope. And you know, very personal experience I had with him just yesterday. We were talking about this anniversary year and the presence of the brothers here at this campus. And I know he presented a gift to the brothers on behalf of the university in this celebratory bicentennial year. He actually got very emotional when he began talking about the impact of the brothers and the need to make sure to continue that this legacy continues and is strengthened and is present. And I just really admire that he leads with mission. And we love him. We're going to miss him, certainly. We know he's not going to be far after he retires. He's going to be involved in the life of the university. But we also owe him a deep gratitude and a debt of gratitude for what he's done for Holy Cross education, what he's done here at St. Edward's University.
And we look forward to that continuing with our new president, Montse Fuentes, who'll be coming in July. So a new chapter of St. Edward's is opening up, but that tradition will continue to be stressed and really important here.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good segue as we wrap up, that April 15th through the 18th is the Holy Cross Institute Convocation. Dr. Martin will be one of the key presenters at that event to open the event on the 16th. There's more information, of course, on the Holy Cross Institute and St. Edward's University website. And then during the closing ceremonies, Dr. Fuentes will be present with us, and she'll share her vision for the future of Holy Cross right here at St. Edward's University and with the Holy Cross Institute. So if we have time to be able to play the promo video, we will wrap up with that. But I have to again tell you what a pleasure this was for me to join the two of you.
As always.
Amazing.
You added so much to the two of to our previous presentation. So thanks for everything.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Really remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I like to close, let's remain disciples with hope to bring.
Amen.
That's right. Let's be it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful campus of St. Edward's University here in Austin, Texas, home of the Holy Cross Institute. From April 15th through the 18th, the Holy Cross Institute Convocation, that annual gathering of Holy Cross educators from around the world, will be coming to you. This completely virtual event will be coming to you April 15th through the 18th. We'll feature 3 keynote presentations, over 50 workshops and breakout sessions, opportunities to gather in affinity groups, to do networking, to pray together, to celebrate Mass, and to celebrate the 200-year legacy of the Brothers of St. Joseph, now the Brothers of Holy Cross. And best of all, it'll be coming to you absolutely free.
Every human being was put here for service.
We have featured internationally acclaimed book author Jason Reynolds, a graduate from a Holy Cross school, who will talk more with us about racism, anti-racism, and our role as forces for good in society. 200 years ago, the brothers forged forward on faith and trusting in divine providence that they could make a difference in the world. We hope you can join us April 15th through the 18th, and you can register by clicking on this link. And until we see each other again, let's remain disciples with hope to bring. Ave Crux Bezonica.